Guys, it's Felicia with Phylitinmedicine. We're back again with another video. So today is Tuesday, August the 4th, and as promised, I'm keeping this content coming. I'm letting you guys know how third year is going for me, how each rotation is, tips and tricks along the way, and if if I'm feeling a rotation or if it just wasn't for your girl. So before we get started, hold on. Wanted to drink some tea so I could give y'all the real tea on family medicine and how my experience has been so far. So family medicine was a 4-week rotation. I just ended it on Friday, July the 31st, and I took my Comat exam. Your Comat exam, remember, I'm in osteopathic school, and so after each rotation we have to take a standardized exam that is based on a rotation that we just completed. For DOs, we take Comat, and for individuals that are receiving their MDs, they will be taking their shelf exams. They are equivalent to one another, and you take it after each rotation. So I took mine on Friday. Now, the family medicine rotation with family medicine, if you're not familiar, it is your primary care doctor that you're able to see as a very young patient, newborn, infant, all the way up until your elderly years, 94, 95, 97-year-old patient. So it's a wide scope of practice. What I found very interesting with family medicine on my rotation was the fact that it was so relationship based. I am a very people person, and so that was very attractive to see. There was a lot of opportunities, there was a lot of opportunities for teaching in regards to medication, in regards to lifestyle changes. And a lot of it was focused on prevention. There's a lot of screening that happens in that practice of medicine to avoid certain diseases, right? So some of these screening processes would include cervical cancer screening, your mammogram for breast cancer, prostate screening, and and lung cancer screening as well. So a lot of those things are in place in a lot of visits, a lot of your well woman visits, your annual visits, things like that. Also, what I found very interesting, they did something for individuals that are on Medicare. They had visits that were called well Medicare visits, and it's basically just to make sure, a nice way to have a touch basis with your patients to see how are they adapting to life in their elderly years, like, are they able to fend for themselves, are they able to shower and do daily activities, even occupational things, so more so like your finances, shopping, if there's any difficulties in that. And so by touching bases, you kind of know where your patient is and if they need any extra resources or services that could help their life better. So that was pretty interesting. So what I used to do for every day on that rotation is that I carried this small notebook that I was able to fit in my white coat pocket, and basically what this notebook was for me to keep a track of the patients that I was seeing, and more so the case. And so I would go in there, and it would also allow me to take notes when I was doing my HPI, which is my history of present illness, why that patient is coming into the office today. And I would just write down my questions, and I would then be able to present that information to the attending, as well as still using the same notebook as a means of documenting little tricks or acronyms or different things that I learned in the office when the doctor went in with the patient. And so that was that allowed me to have something to review later on for the day if I needed to. Just writing it down basically solidified certain information that I learned. Another thing, how this was helpful, is that my preceptor, he wanted me to do a SOAP note, which is the note that doctors usually write on a patient during a visit, and he wanted me to do that weekly. And so I was able to have this documentation of all the patients that I saw for the week, and then I could pick something interesting that had a wide differential diagnosis so that I could present to him different possibilities on what I thought was going on. So let me rewind. A differential diagnosis is basically you're working up a patient. You think you know exactly what's wrong with them. That is the working diagnosis. However, there may be other concerns that you have for the patient, or just other things that you want to rule out. You're not really that concerned, but it's still something that maybe you want to work up or eliminate. And so that would be considered a differential diagnosis. So that was really good to have. Another thing that I use this notebook for would be if there were certain medications, if it was a certain concept, just something that stuck out that I was just like, oh, I really am not sure what this is. I would then write in my area like homework, and I would give myself homework at the end of the day. And I would then write down the concept, write down the medication or something that I needed to look up, and I would then proceed to online med ed when I went home, and I would review that concept. So that's one thing that I found on family medicine, or just in general on my first rotation, is that you have to be more intentional about your learning, because yes, your attendings may give you an article, they may give you something to read, but it's important for you to do your own work to make sure that you are competent on the next day. Because if my biggest thing was, if you asked me this thing today and I didn't know, I really didn't want to come in tomorrow and you asked me, or it come up later the week and I still had no idea what you were talking about. Another thing that was helpful was at my site we had, and I would say that I learned so much from the residents, because they just gave me nice quick tricks on how to interview a patient, how to run your annual visit. There are two things that just stuck with me that I was able to do every time that I saw a patient. So one thing was for physicals. And so when we were doing physicals, they would kind of, for the history taking part, they kind of gave me this acronym, and it was called FED TACO. And so FED TACO stands for family history. E is for what are you doing for exercise. D for was diet. T was for, give me a second. C was for tobacco use. A was for alcohol use. C was for caffeine. O was for occupation. And so things like that, it just gave me a nice systematic order to always do. Every time I did a physical, I kind of knew those were the baseline questions that I wanted to ask my patient, and I could elaborate more on that. Another thing was, once I knew somebody was coming in for a regular office visit, I went down with my OPQRST onset. What are some things that make it worse? What are things that make it better? What are some, all that jive, to just kind of give me that nice focus that I need when I'm interviewing the patient. So that was very helpful. Also, tips how you can get more involved on your rotation. Guys, you have to be kind of like a shadow. Pardon me, I have to keep fixing my hair. You kind of have to be like a shadow with these attendings. And you have to look as if you're ready to work whenever. So a lot of times, my attendings, we're interviewing, I'm listening, I'm taking my notes. If I saw them reach for gloves, I reached for gloves. I was just ready. If they got close to the patient, I got close to the patient. If they squat, I squat. And so I think what that did was, it let the preceptor know, like, hey, this girl is ready to work. Like, she really wants to do it. And so I found that there were so many times, because I was ready and I was right there, the attendants were able to say, hey, Felicia, listen to this, do that, grab this. And so I was able to get a little bit more hands-on experience that I think that maybe some of my colleagues had or didn't have. And I think it's just about your readiness to take initiative. And if you do that every day, somebody's going to let you do something, and so that's really, really good. And what else? Okay, another thing that I did in this notebook was that I took notes on how I felt about the rotation each day. If it was something that was a highlight, if there was something that I wasn't really feeling. The reason why I am doing this for myself is so that by the end of third year, I think having all these reflections on each rotation will really help me figure out exactly what I want to do, because there are 3 things on the radar for me, and I think by the conclusion of third year, having these quick notes and having something to refer to will allow me to remember, like, oh yes, I really, really did enjoy this. Because I think you can remember the big things on your rotations, but it might be those small things that could make or break your experience that you may forget about. And so that's just something that I'm doing. Now, in regards to the prep for the shelf exam at the end of your rotation, use a resource called ComQuest, and I did the questions. I did half of the questions. I didn't make it through all, because it was very hard to be on rotations, do questions, juggle everything. It was a lot. So what I ended up doing, I tried my best to do questions all the time, but I didn't make it through. But I did the questions, and I learned a lot. Also, YouTube videos were another resource for me, and I also use this book occasionally, but I didn't get through a lot of it, just certain concepts and helpful. However, the thing with family medicine, and what I found the most difficult in preparing for this standardized exam, is that it's broad. Family medicine is everything. I just told you, it's a wide scope of practice. You're seeing kids all the way up to elderly. You're trying to prevent certain cancers. You're doing screening. So it's all of that on this exam. So it's a lot to focus on. But you just have to try and do your best. You have to use probably several resources, because a lot of resources don't have just one thing for family medicine, because it encompasses everything. You're getting your OBGYN information as well. So I took the exam on Friday. I'm probably going to get my score next week Friday. So your girl don't know how she did, but I believe in my heart that I did my best, and so I just have to wait and see. But overall, I just want to let you guys know that family medicine was really, really cool. I enjoyed it. I think it was a great first rotation to do, especially if you're just finishing up with boards, if you're still kind of like in the midst of studying for boards, because it's so wide range. It's a constant review, and so even though I'm still studying for boards and I had other things to do at the same time, I didn't feel like I was missing out from studying directly for boards, because I'm studying information that will be on my boards, because I'm studying everything. I'm studying all the systems together. So I still think it was a great review. And it's a nice like intro into rotations. My site was basically a clinic setting, so that was cool. I got to work with different attendings, different personality types. Another tip is every day, well, you don't have to do it every day. If you're working with a new attending, I think at the beginning of the day, it's good to say like, hey, like, what are some of your expectations? What is it that you like? And maybe by the end of the day, if your schedule is always rotating, you have different attendings, ask them, hey, like, was there anything that you think that I could do better? And I think by constantly doing that, doing it in a way where you're not annoying, but just showing that, hey, like, I want to learn, I want to get better, is very, very good. It's going to be very helpful. And again, you're working with different people. And so in a way, you have to learn how to be flexible, be adaptable, still be you, but learn how to tweak certain things to be favorable to one attending and favorable to the other, because you just want to have good evaluations at the end of it. And I was able to talk to my preceptor before my last day, and I heard some of my evaluations that, your girl did good on her evaluation. So I'm looking forward to see how I do on the Comat, because I think family medicine was great. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's cool to see medicine come alive, because after your first 2 years, you're kind of just like, oh my God, are we really going to see anything? But being on the wards is completely worth it. So if you're first and second year, keep pushing on. Third years, keep rocking out. And thank you so much. I have started my PEDS rotation, and right now I'm in the emergency room. My shift is from 2 to 10 p.m. and I will come back to you next week and let you guys know all about how that PEDS rotation was so far. All right, bye. Thank you for watching. And what? Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe and watch Phylitinmedicine. Duh. Thanks, guys. Bye.